Hello and welcome to another episode of the 3 on 3 Hoops Pod, the voice of 3 on 3 basketball, and where we break down why 3 on 3 is the secret sauce to player development. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined as always by the one and only Coach Jay, aka Coach Jared Dent. What's going on, Coach?
Man, I'm here, man. Another week to get better. And once again, as always, I'm happy to be a part of the nation.
Yes, and happy 4th of July, or that was yesterday. We're recording this a day after 4th of
Yeah.
July, so we're fresh off some hot dogs and hamburgers. Both of our teams had some losses. Coach Jay and the Braves and the Phillies both took a loss, took an L. But
I'm this close to about to give up on the team, man.
we're gonna make it up with this podcast. So today we're going to be pitting 3 on 3 versus 5 on 5. We're gonna talk about the advantages both formats have. We're here to break down what each format actually teach best and how smart coaches can use both formats to develop better players, better teams, and better leaders. And Coach Jay, since you are in the midst of your club's team season, you're currently coaching 5 on 5. I thought it'd be appropriate just to start out with this question for you. Have you ever had a situation, or have you ever seen one of your players act or play differently in 3 on 3 game in a 3 on 3 game versus a 5 on 5 scrimmage?
Of course, I have, and I do currently go through that, like you just said. It's the culture shocks to some kids. It's like think about back in the day when you went to middle school, right? Sixth, seventh, eighth grade, or whatever, and you got used to that, and then you graduate, and then your first day of ninth grade comes. You go to a bigger school, it's a whole lot of more kids, and then there's a little bit of a culture shock. Like, oh, there's a lot more going on here. That's how it, that's how I describe it, and I have kids that are going through that now. Obviously, how we preach, 3 on 3 is more involvement with the basketball. And that's the biggest thing that I see that's challenging for some kids when it gets to the 5 on 5. They don't touch the ball as much as they're used to in the 3 on 3. And that kind of makes them forget the rest of, their responsibilities on the court, motion, communication, off ball screens, etc. So that's one thing that I'm currently going through now with my club team is just preaching that, hey, you know, there's more players on the court now, so obviously some touches might decrease, but that doesn't mean you don't do the other things. You still have to move without the ball. You still have to create space. You still have to communicate. You still have to set those off ball screens. So yeah, you know, to answer your question, I know that's a little long winded, but yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about what exactly 5 on 5 teaches better than 3 on 3. Because I mean, we're both big, huge proponents of 3 on 3, but we realize that there's just some things that need to be taught in a 5 on 5 setting. So,
Yeah.
Coach, what's the number one thing you believe 5 on 5 teaches better?
So number one, just playing like within the flow of a new game, right? Um, we're big
So, like
advocates of
game
three on
flow.
three. Yeah, exactly. We're big
Yeah.
advocates of 3 on 3. Obviously, that's what this is all about. But eventually when you touch that 5 on 5 court, there's nothing better than playing, if you're middle school, 2 20-minute halves, or high school, 4 8-minute quarters. Like nothing beats that. So you need to learn how to be able to play within that flow, being able to know when to pace, the game, being able to know situational awareness, clock awareness. That's number one. Number two, playing within the system. Now, uh 3 on 3 is more free flowing. 5 on 5 is a little bit more structured. There's plays that are drawn up. There's actions and sets, right? 5 out,
Yeah, and
4 out, one in.
there's definitely more there's more play styles you have to get used to.
Yeah,
Like you and I probably coach differently, you know what I'm saying? So, a player would have to get used to playing for you versus playing for me
right.
in the 5 on 5. Teams have different systems and play styles. You see that more in 5 on 5 than you do in 3 on 3 is basically there's one way to play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You like you said, more free flowing.
yeah,
With 5 on 5, you do have to learn different styles of play. And I do think that's, it's advantageous for players to learn different styles of play because you never know, which coach you're going to encounter in the future. But yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And just knowing, you know, now you have roles too, right? Like when you have five players on the floor, like now you have roles. You might not be a player that a play is drawn up for, or you may be a player that the other kids are not, looking for. So, in order for you to get the ball, you got to rebound and play defense.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying? So if you want to, if you want to get more involved in the game, you have to get more involved and more active in other aspects besides what's going on with the basketball. And then lastly, team
Well,
defense. Like,
before you go, I do have something to say.
yeah,
So, it just reminded me when you were talking. It reminded me of something I used to do as a coach. This was, I think, I may have talked about this before, but when I was coaching JV, we had and when you're coaching JV, you have a lot of ninth graders. So you got, a lot of times these players are, the stars of their eighth grade
yeah,
team or whatever, and they come in and, you know, they try out for varsity and they didn't make it, or they're forced to play JV right away. There's a lot of times when that's when I feel like when roles are introduced,
yeah,
more so than in middle school. But when you enter high school, I really try not to pigeonhole kids into certain roles.
yeah,
I try to make them I try to help them learn how to play each role. Like we'll
yeah,
have one lead and score, one go to guy, one lead and score. Uh, I want to make each kid feel useful. So
yeah,
something I used to do is give every kid after maybe a week of practice, because by then we know what each player is good at. I'll give each player an index card, with their name on the front, and on the back I have their role, whether
yeah.
it's like rebounder or you know uh, a primary ball handler.
Mhm.
And I'll have like different bullet points of responsibilities. Like Ryan, you're the guy who always takes the ball out after
Yeah,
every dead ball because he's the only one I trust.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
Andy, you're the one who you're going to be our primary ball handler. Everyone's going to look for Andy. And I had each player read their roles to the team, so everyone is aware of everyone's role.
yeah,
And they
exactly.
weren't locked into that role all season, but I say your role is to be a rebounder for the team. So you better lead the team in rebounds, per every game.
Yeah,
So that gives the kid a goal to hit every game, and it also makes every kid feel useful. Even the kids that didn't play much. Hey, your role is to keep the bench straight, keep the
yeah,
bench in the game. All right,
yeah.
so just to make
Lead the
every
defense chant.
exactly.
Yeah,
But the point is that every kid feels useful, and we always, and this is an old saying. I'm sure you've heard of it, or I'm sure every coach knows this. But be a star in your role.
yeah,
So, and if you wish to be a star in another role, then you can show me during practice or whatever. So,
exactly.
yeah. So, but in every game, everyone had to focus on the role. But that's what that kind of reminded me of. And that's something you can't do in 3-on-3,
Right.
obviously. So,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So.
Everybody pretty much got the same role. Don't get beat and get open.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else you can think of, or
um, defense,
yeah,
defense for sure. For middle school and youth, I'm well, not so much middle school, but youth. I'm very, very much against zone. But high school, if you play zone defense, right,
can't
you know,
avoid it.
yeah, you can't, yeah. So it's none of
Unfortunately,
that in 3-on-3. Yeah.
there's a coach right now teaching their third grader how to play a 2-3 or
Bro,
1-3-1
we
trap.
played a team, right? We played a team and we got demolished, of course. But we played a team. They ran a 1-2-2 full court press. And then when the press got beat, they ran a 2-3 zone.
And what age group is this?
This is seventh grade,
Yeah,
right? But for some of my seventh graders, they still can't make a pass from inbounds to half court. They can't pass from one sideline to the other, right? So imagine how ugly that looks when you're getting pressed. When my guys can't even make the pass from one side of the court to the other, and then when we do make it to the front court, now we're playing against a zone where when we do practice and stuff like that, I don't really teach these kids like zone offense, right? We do 3-on-3, like we do
yeah.
other 2-on-2. We do things like that where we're working against man to man type of
How are you
defense,
gonna
right?
get that fifth grade championship, coach, if you're not practicing zone offense? Come on, man.
I know, right? I guess. But yeah, that's the last thing that I want to touch on with the 5-on-5. Just let's playing team defense.
Mm.
Communication for sure.
Oh yeah,
And then just rotations because there are a lot more of them, right? And there's a lot more different responsibilities, when you're playing a defense in 5-on-5, whether it's man to man or zone.
yeah, yeah. So just like Coach was saying, defensive rotations. One of 'em, I feel like I've gone back and looked at some of our podcasts,
It's hard, man.
and I seem to say this phrase a lot. One of my favorite things to coach is is I say that with everything. One of my favorite things to coach is defense. Actually, and I
Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
teaching. Man to man help side defense, and teaching defensive rotations, and that's. And I don't necessarily go 5-on-5 on this, but I do go 5-on-4. I do like the disadvantage defense, so I do 4 versus 3 or 5 versus 4 or whatever. So I do, but that's something you do need in a, you do teach better in a 5-on-5 setting. We'll get to this more in the 3-on-3 part, where 3-on-3, that's more focused on individual defense.
Hmm.
For team defense, you need 5-on-5
You
to
need all
teach
those
that.
players.
Exactly. So, teaching team defensive rotations is really key, and it's something that can only really be taught in 5-on-5. So, you're exactly right about that. So, but this really, so all the things that you name, with you know teaching structure, roles, team defense, game flow, play different play styles. This only really works well only if they know how to play.
Yeah,
So that's where I believe 3-on-3 kind of fills the gaps.
exactly.
Sometimes, especially when you're talking about younger kids, they get too caught up in memorizing a play. I don't know how many plays you got, Coach. You, I
Nah,
don't
man,
know if you,
we just do one. I got one
yeah,
play, and then we got a whole
good.
bunch of offensive actions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
that's
my
it.
you're my kind of coach, because
Yeah.
I know there are some coaches that'll have 15 different plays,
Right.
and
Yeah, I
before,
told
like,
you.
it's a football team, and before
Yeah.
before you know it, kids are just intimidated. They don't know where to go. They don't really know how to play the game, because they're just focused on where to go after I make this pass to the wing. Where do I cut? And they're
Yeah.
just so focused on the play. And unfortunately, I see that with a lot of younger kids, and I think it's starting to change now. You're starting to see a little bit more free flowing basketball. But sometimes a kid can lose their confidence because they can't run a play right. I mean,
Exactly.
that's the reason behind. That's the reason why a lot of kids find summer ball and AAU ball more fun, because than playing it for their school teams,
Exactly.
because there aren't
Less
that many
structure.
plays. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just less structured. They're just going out, rolling the ball out, and trying to out athlete everybody. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but this is where, when you're talking about 3-on-3, this is, I feel, even like during the summer, this is where kids get to work on their bag, all their moves that they learn from their trainer or whatnot. But
Yeah.
even learning all the combos and the moves from their trainer, that doesn't really teach you how to play either. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is where 3-on-3 comes in.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
You hit it right on the head. 3-on-3 teaches you how to play. If you know how to play, you can play 5-on-5, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, whatever the case may be. If you know what you're doing, um, you know, like I said before, it's still all the same. All the concepts are the same. It's just
mhm.
it's more characters in the play this time.
It's crazy. I feel like 3-on-3 kind of slows things down for the players,
Yeah.
but in turn that speeds up your development. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it teaches things that sometimes get lost in 5-on-5. So all right. So since we're talking about it, what are like the top 3 things for you that you believe 3-on-3 teaches best?
Repetition for sure, right?
Yeah.
Repetition, repetition, repetition. Decision making. You know what I'm saying? Just like you said, it tends to slow down for the guys in the 3-on-3. So you see those backdoor cuts. You see the guy actually roll off of the pick and roll, right? On ball defense for sure is one thing, especially at the younger levels. I feel like defense isn't taught as strongly there. So having the younger guys and girls in the 3-on-3, just improving their on ball defense and just understanding how valuable of a skill that is and how needed that is, right? Like every team I feel like needs at least one perimeter on ball stopper, right? So that's my second one, and space creation. Like I'm constantly, especially with my 5-on-5 guys, not my club team. I'm constantly screaming out space,
Yeah.
space it, get wide, get wide, get wide. So,
And a lot of, and not to, sorry to jump on you, but
no, 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 no.
not to because this is a lot of coaches' mistakes. Like they'll scream out, get wide or create some or make space or whatever terminology you use in your practices or whatever. But a lot of times these players don't understand why. Like they don't see
Yeah,
it, but they're doing it
yeah,
because you say it. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
it's hard to really teach that in a 5-on-5 setting unless you see like the result
yeah,
of the play. Like, see, this is why.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
but like
exactly.
I feel like with 3-on-3, you see it on every play. And this is what, this is why one of the things I like to do is you create constraints during 3-on-3 drills, like no
Right,
dribbles or limited dribbles. And you're forced to create space. You're forced to think off ball movement and what I'm saying, and cutting and all that stuff. That becomes even more important when you put those constraints on the players. But like, yeah, to your point, like, you're constantly yelling, we need more spacing on the court on your 5-on-5 games. That's because kids don't really understand why. They're just doing it
right.
because you're saying. And I think 3-on-3 kind of brings that why like almost immediately. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, you definitely have to tell them why, which I do tell them why. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to,
It's
that's
easier for
another
the it's
thing that
either
I'm.
easier for them to see in 3-on-3.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
what I'm saying?
easier for them to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is easier for them to see because that spacing is out there. But yeah, that's the main three that I
Yeah.
think are the most transferable over to the 5-on-5 game for sure.
I wanted one thing that's important that I can believe you can add is communication. Like
Yeah,
I feel like because of the smaller setting, because there are less players, you'll see people communicate more in 3-on-3 more so than they would in 5-on-5. When 5-on-5, it's easier for someone who's more of an alpha, kind of step up and kind of take control of that environment. The stronger personalities, even with younger kids, you'll see, stronger personalities kind of rise up and other kids kind of back off a little bit. But in 3-on-3, like
yeah,
you're kind of forced to communicate, or like that communication comes out naturally because of
yeah,
the confidence that comes out because of the constant touches. You know what I'm saying? So like the more and more you do something, the more confident you get. This is something that you and I preach all the time. Like, this 3-on-3 just kind of breeds confidence in a player
right,
because it allows them because of how many touches you're getting, it allows you to fail. You know what I'm saying? You're not as afraid to fail. So because you fail, that's kind of the backbone for success there. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So like once you fail over again, success comes after that. So and
exactly.
then thus comes confidence. So and because of that, because you're confident, you speak up more. So
Yep.
even like you say little things like check up, you got to check up, or no, you got to pick him up. So
Yeah,
like talking on defense, so that kind of individual defense, that helps in the individual defense um skills that you mentioned earlier. So
no doubt.
um and also naturally because of the spacing, it helps you sharpen your basketball IQ. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So you get to see those reads and those cuts, how you relocate. So when you see all this happening and you see it over and over and over again, that just makes you a smarter player because you've been in that situation before.
yep,
So you see the disadvantages. You get more disadvantages in 3-on-3 than you do on 5-on-5 on every possession. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So you get, like you said, your main goal is not to get beat.
Yeah,
Someone's gonna get beat. You know what I'm
right.
saying? That 3-on-3, and you're gonna constantly see yourself in a 2-on-1 or trying to make a decision on what do I go out here and leave my man or do I stay with my man and let him shoot? Like you're constantly in
Exactly.
that decision mode. So it helps you sharpen your basketball IQ, build confidence, and all that stuff. So and you lead more because I mean you have more. We talked about this in an earlier pod.
Natural
Just
leaders become
natural
from it.
leaders.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just because of how involved you are. So all right. So anything else? I think we covered
Yeah.
uh everything from that. Okay. So if this is the kind of conversation that is helping you rethink how to develop your players, we'd love to have you join the 3-on-3 Hoops Nation. Um, go to 3on3hoopsnation.com, subscribe to the newsletter, send us a message. or drop a voicemail, and you can be featured on the pod. It's we also have a 3-on-3 spotlight on there where we'll spotlight a league, a coach, a player, every couple of weeks or so, and it's just a growing community of coaches and parents and players who believe 3-on-3 is the secret sauce to player development.
Yep. Nation, baby, nation.
Yeah. All right. So here's where we can kind of bring this all together. And this coaches, this is how you struck. This is how, or actually, yeah. So coaches, this is how you can structure your practices to get the best of both worlds of 3-on-3 or coaching 3-on-3, coaching 5-on-5. So here's three practical ideas that you can take away from this, and that's use 3-on-3 in tryouts. I know that's something I personally do. I wish I would have done this in my early years of coaching, and even some of you can even use this in some of your early practices to assess like your true decision makers. Like like I said earlier, from the first week of practice, who you can trust in certain situations, and and it's in 3-on-3. You can use this to make game situation, or actually you can make game situation 5-on-5 too, but seeing the best decision makers in 3-on-3, you can use that as a tool where you can evaluate more than just your top two guys, because everyone's a decision maker.
Yeah.
Another thing is, make 3-on-3, use 3-on-3 in your warm-up drills. And we have
I
our
like that.
pregame warm-up drills that we don't do even in practices. You know how you kind of warm up to your practice. We used to do my early years of coaching. Again, I didn't start using 3-on-3 until my last 2 years of coaching. And so,
Yeah.
I wish I would have used this all my years of coaching, but we used to start, 5-on-0 dummy offense. We even did 2-line layups, those, stuff that people did in the 50s. So, you know, we had our drills or whatever, layup drills and stuff like that. But there's a ton of 3-on-3 drills that you can use, and it brings out the competitive juices early. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So get those kids, get the blood flowing early. You want competitive practice, or as quickly as possible. You have decision. I'm sure you run decision drills, in 3-on-3 with
Yeah.
constraints, like with no dribbles, one pass per player and stuff like that. So, do you have a favorite 3-on-3 way to use 3-on-3 in your practice? And
Yeah.
how has 3-on-3 helped your team, or even in your growth as a coach?
Yeah, for sure. We I use 3-on-3 to get us started when we before we start our team session. So most of the time when we start our practices, we do skill stuff for like the first half hour. So when we get ready to get into the strategy or like the teamwork, when we get ready to do the 4v4, 5v5s, 3v3s, or whatever, we start with 3-on-3. Well, we start. I start 3-on-0 right with my pass cut opposite drill,
Yeah.
just so we can get the players passing and moving on the move, whatever the case may be.
And you're able to
And
do
then,
that and unlike like 5-on-5, like you can
yeah,
do this at multiple baskets too, since you're using a
exactly.
smaller amount of players, and you can get more
Uh-huh.
players involved instead of just watching, waiting for their
Yep.
turn. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I'll get that going. I'll get them shuffled in a couple of times, and then I'll get a defense out there, dummy defense, right? I don't want guys going for steals or anything like that to start off. I just want
Mhm.
you guys out there as placeholders. So now instead of screening air, we're actually making screens on an actual body. So we do that to get started, and
And
just
wait, before I like that because
Mhm.
I never really tried it, with like 3-on-0, but I do like that because you're focusing more on the technique
Yeah,
versus with 5-on-5. I think you're focusing more on the play, and you know what I'm
yeah.
saying, like when you're doing like a lot of 5-on-0 stuff, you're focusing on the play or on the set, where to go in every spot. With 3-on-3, if you're doing like a lot of even 3-on-0 type stuff, you're focusing more on the like the
The
technique for
movements.
that pick and
Yeah,
roll, yeah, the movement. So
exactly. Yeah, I'm really, really, really big on that. I'm really big on movement and just mental reps. Like even if it's not a guy there, when I'm at least me, when I used to play a long time ago, and what I try to teach the guys now as we're practicing, like even though there's nobody there, visualize that there's somebody there. Right. So
mhm.
I'm just very, very big on that and just getting those type of reps in first before you put an actual person there. So we do that to get started, and it helps. I mean, especially. the guys that want to get the little things right, you know, to get the screen right, to get the communication part down. I've seen a lot of growth in players in those particular areas where they're not just so much focused on having the ball in their hand or getting the ball passed to them. Right? I preach,
Mhm.
passing, moving, getting to a spot, and then the ball will somehow, some way find you. So that also has helped with my growth as well. Just um, keep preaching the movement, the ball, not only the ball itself, but keep preaching the movement of the players, and then the ball will eventually find its way to you.
Mm.
So that's how I go into it. As far as when it does come to the strategy portion of the practice, that's just how I teach it. Pass, 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 move, move, move. The ball will eventually find you, and then we'll make a bucket.
Yeah, and for me personally, when I started using 3-on-3 more, I guess I realized I was a little too structured when I first started coaching. I felt like I had to get these drills in, to start, and then I had to do, my, our practice our plays in the middle, and then do more like
Yeah,
game situations. I was a little bit more. I was too structured, and when I focused on just doing the drills and stuff. And when I started using more 3-on-3, I realized that, I just, kind of allowed kids to kind of grow on their own and try to figure stuff out on your own. And just like, just regular, human interaction, just, if you try to figure things on your own, it kind of sticks with you. Um,
yeah,
it sticks with you longer, or, get
yeah.
quicker. And then you can,
Exactly.
and then in turn, teach the younger players, because you figured it out. So now you can explain in your words. And because a lot of times, you know, when we say something from from a coach's standpoint, but even being a player before, things might be more impactful coming from a player than a coach sometimes.
Get a coach. Yeah,
Because they're the ones out on the court. So I mean, I've learned stuff from my players. So
yeah,
believe it or
yeah.
not.
Heck
So
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so now, I mean, even from like a seventh and eighth grader, what I'm saying? So I learned
yeah.
how to talk the other seventh and eighth graders. So yeah, so we hope that you guys got a lot out of that. We hope that we can convince you that we're not against 5-on-5. We always say that, but we're
Yep.
just here for developing players, just to be better basketball players overall. That's our main goal. My personal goal is just to help get kids to enjoy the game, just because it's the greatest game on the planet. And
It's all about
I don't.
fun. It's all about the fun.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to choose between 3-on-3 or and 5-on-5. Play both. Just get better, and just know what each one teaches, and be intentional about when and how you're using each format. Don't just kind of roll the ball out there and let them play. Have a vision in 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 mind, where when you have kids play 5-on-5 or 3-on-3. What do you want them to do? What do you want them to turn into? So, all right. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the 3-on-3 Spot. Subscribe whenever, wherever you listen, and check us out on 3on3hoopsnation.com. Join the
Yes.
movement. Leave us a message, send a question, or just let us know how you're using 3-on-3 in your program. We might feature you on a future episode. We will feature you on a future episode. So, Coach, any final thoughts? Give us something to think about this week.
Just keep on pushing. Keep on
Keep on
pushing,
pushing.
man.
Keep on keeping on, right?
Keep on,
You
keep
got
keeping
games.
on.
You got
Yep.
games this weekend.
Nah, man, not this weekend. We're gonna ramp back up next week. We got practice, and then we do have a tournament next week too.
Good luck on that. So
Yeah,
we're gonna get your update on that next week.
for sure.
Yeah. So until next time, just remember, keep playing, keep practicing, keep getting better, and we'll see you when we see you. Peace.